Hello, welcome back to They Not Like Us. I'm your host, Aaron, and today I'm joined by Artemisia Divine. Welcome to the show, Artemisia.
Hi, Aaron. So glad to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time to do so. Could you tell people a little bit about yourself, please?
Well, I'm a sexual fantasy expert. And that usually gets attention as soon as I say that at a party. I am somebody who teaches the sexperts how to understand and engage the mental part of what turns us on, how to understand the psychology of what turns us on. And I teach therapists, I teach self discovery seekers, teach sex workers and professional dominatrixes, and all sorts of people who are in a position where they might be dealing with their clients' confusion around sexual fantasies and want some clarity around it. So, yes, that's not exactly your usual job description, is it? You're frozen, I think.
Yeah, we did.
Well,
We froze for a second there. We're okay now, I think. Um, Artemisia, can you just before we get into the conversation any deeper, can you
mm,
just explain so we're all on the same page what a sexual fantasy is?
that is an excellent question because a lot of people actually get very confused on that term. It's not as straightforward as you'd think. So, a sexual fantasy is anything that you think about that creates sexual arousal for you. So it's the mental part of what turns you on. So sometimes you might be focused on your partner in order to become sexually aroused and their physical attributes and the energy and connection between you. And sometimes you're noticing a meaning making story that's going on in the background of the moment. You're like, they're looking at me like that. Does that mean that they think I'm the hero? And like you've got some sort of mental story going on in the background of the moment. Yes, so becoming the hero and saving the damsel in distress and having them desperately want to unbuckle your belt as in response. Or it could be just actually thinking about your actual partner who's in front of you, but instead of thinking about them in the present, you're thinking about what they did last week that was exciting for you. Or you're imagining what might be going to happen on date night this Friday night, and that is becoming exciting for you. But basically, it's the mental part of what makes you sexually excited, what helps you change from your normal everyday state into an aroused state. So that is what a sexual fantasy is. But actually, sexual fantasies are stories. They're the stories about desire. And the reason that I actually work with them, why they're so much more profound than we first think that they are, is that they unlock how desire works inside of us. And most of us are wandering around the world desperately trying to fulfill our desires, not just sexual desires, all kinds of desires, at the same time as not trusting our desire. We're trying to fulfill our desire to become a CEO or become successful in business. We're trying to fulfill our desire to get that house or go on that travel trip. We're trying to fulfill our desire to have the perfect body. But we don't actually trust our own desire. We have this fraught relationship with it. And if when we don't have trust in this part of ourselves, we've never been taught how to be in relationship with this part of ourselves, it does. Well, for a start, it starts acting out in all sorts of interesting ways. If you refuse to talk about it and acknowledge it and understand it, it's going to take the steering wheel in ways that you did not preconceive in all sorts of situations in life. But also, we'll try and fulfill it in ways that are not actually going to satiate it because we're not hearing it properly. We're not meeting the real desire behind the story symbolism. So, why understanding how sexual fantasies works is so important is because if you want to have actual satiation in your sex life, but in every area of your life, you have to understand how this part of your psyche works. What is it doing? Why is it coming up with this crazy story of turning you into a hero so that somebody would suddenly want to unbuckle your belt? Like, why does it do that? What is that about? How does that benefit us? And do we need to live that out literally in order to satisfy our needs? Or is it actually pointing to something else to actually get our needs satiated? So that is why I'm pretty passionate about it. Actually, it impacts every area of our life.
Yeah, I suppose, evolutionary, we, are designed to reproduce, and we're designed to eat and survive, and they are the core drivers of all animals, really, including humans.
You're right. There's that level of desire, the drive level, and then there's another level to look at, which is meaning and purpose. So there's survival level, but then let's say you've survived. Then what? What is this force for then? Why do you want
What?
to eat now? You've already had enough.
Yeah, it's true. Why do we kind of push our desires down then? Why do we kind of hide them away and push them down into the dark corners of ourselves and try to not let them out?
Because they don't seem to make any sense whatsoever. I always ask this question. So, if you were to follow your desire, unbridled, without any filters, without adjusting it in any way, shape, or form, how might that harm you? How might that harm your lover? How might that harm the fabric of society? I mean, if I just followed my desire willy nilly, I would never pay tax because I don't want to. Desire is wanting. And then I'd wonder why there's no roads. I'd eat all of the sugar and wonder why I had diabetes. I would, I would just grab that bottom of the person in front of me, even though they're a complete stranger. And, consent be damned. How do we trust this force that doesn't seem to understand consequences? This force that seems dangerous to us. And in fact, we've been taught since the very beginning of our lives, for most of us, that desire is actually quite literally the little devil on the shoulder, while the angel's on the other side. The desire is tempting us into something that's going to harm us or somebody else. Well, the angel will tell you to have self-restraint, to suppress this force inside of you that can't be trusted. Or if you're Buddhist, it's the source of all suffering, desires. It's not something that's got a very good reputation. And yet, when we take a closer look at what it's actually trying to achieve for us, it is also the force of all motivation of everything good in life as well. It's the source of all motivation, actually. If you do not have desire, you do not have wanting. Desire is I want. So it's something I don't yet have, but I now have some sort of magnetic urge towards getting or experiencing or obtaining. So you simply wouldn't get off the couch if you did not have desire. You'd sit there contentedly till you turn to bones, right? But if you have a desire, you'll get up. Suddenly, desire will, you might be content on the couch having a wonderful time, but desire will appear in your awareness suddenly. It wasn't there a moment ago, and now it's very clearly there. You know, without a doubt, you want to eat a peanut butter sandwich. It was not there before, and now it is. You're not even hungry. So this is not the hunger drive. This is something else. Right? And you even know what kind of bread you want. You might even now struggle off the couch and put some pants on and go out in the rain to get the right bread for it, because now you are willing to leave your comfort zone in order to be able to experience something new, to obtain something new. And if it is not something directly linked to your survival, then it changes something else inside of you. What has it changed? It's changed something, your state of consciousness, your state of being, right? It's changed from sitting still to moving. Already you've changed. But let's just imagine that it's this peanut butter sandwich is a peanut butter sandwich that happens to also, in your memory, be tagged as the same peanut butter sandwich you ate with your best friend while you were sitting on swings. You were carefree, and it was a sunny day, and you had a beautiful garden around you, and you felt really free, and you were pushing the swing as high as you could possibly go, and it just felt amazing. And you've now actually, just in eating that peanut butter sandwich, experienced some of that same freedom again, that same joyfulness again. There's something inside of that that's there. It's a symbol of this feeling. And it's helped you change state of consciousness that when you were sitting on the couch to contentment to more free, more open, more excited, more alive. It's changed something. Right? So if we start thinking about sexual fantasies as stories that change your state of consciousnness from one state to another, you start to think of sexual fantasies as my theory, and this is a unique theory to me, is that sexual fantasies are the exact story that our egos need to hear in order to get us past our fear of vulnerability so that we can connect, that we can just let go, so we can dance like no one's watching, so we can just let it all flap, all right? So we can just be in pure experiencing, so we can move from I to we, to this urge to merge, this feeling of, even if you're not interested in feeling romantic connection, you're just interested in feeling primal connection, it's still absolutely an urge to merge. Because think about that feeling you get when you dance on the dance floor and everybody's in sync together, and it just feels like you're connected, and it feels incredible. It's very primal. It's not romantic, and yet it is this, we're all in sync. We're in flow together. We're in this together. We're no longer thinking. We're just purely experiencing. We've surrendered our egos to the moment. Right? So sexual fantasies have to include our ego's fear of vulnerability, and they have to transform that fear so that we can let go. That's what they do. So on the surface, these sexual fantasies seem to be all smutty, and they seem to be silly and ridiculous sometimes. Like, what a flimsy excuse that was. I was in the shower naked, and the wind just blew open, the door open, and you saw me. Oh no, oops. Like, it's this silly stories that seem so ridiculous, and we can laugh at them, and yet they serve a purpose. That wind blowing the door open so that I could be seen is helping me to get to feel desired without any risk whatsoever of rejection, because it wasn't me that did the socially inappropriate thing by exposing myself naked to you. The wind did it. It's getting past the obstacles that are in the way. It takes a little bit to wrap your head around, so bear with me, because it is a little bit of a thing. I want to back up a little bit, if that's okay, and actually then come back to breaking down actual fantasies for you so that it makes more sense. But the current theories around why we have sexual fantasies, and why my theory is so radical and so important, is that, well, basically people turn to therapists most of the time in order to try and understand the brain, because they're the specialists with the university degree that says they understand brains. Except that most therapists are not taught how to understand sexual fantasies, so they can't actually help you. So the only lens that they look at them through is through what is wrong with your childhood and needs fixing. What's wrong with your attachment style that needs fixing? What's broken and needs healing? Like, what is this wounded to healing model, right? So, and then people might think, oh, you have that fantasy about domination and submission. That must mean that you have trauma in the background, or you're some sort of pervert. You're something wrong with you for having these kinds of fantasies. Let's go and look and see what happened in your adolescent years and try and fix it for you. Right. So it's already a pathologizing view. Or some other therapists are really switched on and open-minded people, and they say something like, oh, it's totally normal. Everybody has sexual fantasies. There's nothing to worry about. We don't really know why you have them, though. So we don't know how you can engage them, and don't know how to appease you and make you feel better about the fact that you're very confused around your sexual desires, your sexual fantasies. So they can't help. Or other people will come in with these theories of, like, you have these sexual fantasies of being a submissive female because women have been oppressed. They've got this sociological lens in which they're analyzing sexual fantasies. So it's like, because of this system of power, women feel much more secure in the submissive role rather than the dominant role. And they can only get their needs met if they can pretend that they're still the good girl. It's not their fault. He did it to me, right? These sorts of submission, just in case anyone's confused, submission, domination and submission. Think 50 Shades of Grey. Think about submitting to some impossible, it can be any gender, doesn't have to be a male, any person who is just really powerful and beautiful and demands what they want. So these are the common views of what a sexual fantasy is, or why we have them. And what I'm saying is, actually, let's take a closer look. Let's look at them as stories. Let's just look at them as stories that change our state of consciousness, that overcome any obstacle that is in the way for you to move from I to we, so you can let go. And what can we learn about that? How can we bring that to life? And I did. I brought it to life. To tell you what, I tested this theory, and it works, because in my former role as a sex worker and as a professional dominatrix, I was paid to become the sexual fantasy of thousands of people. And it was in this lived experience of actually being with people when they are trying to fulfill their desires and not necessarily understanding them, and listening to their sexual fantasies and playing with them consensually, that I started to understand, oh, if I trust this fantasy, if I don't try and bring it to life literally, but if I trust what this story is achieving for this person, and then I create a real life date experience where I activate the same thing, suddenly they have not only just become sexually aroused, they've opened. Their ego has disappeared. They've opened to a bigger sense of self. They have now experiencing things that they never even knew that was possible. They're now, this is what this is for. And it was really touching. We'd have all of these incredible experiences of a complete stranger I just met 2 hours ago suddenly feels like we could see each other's souls through our eyes. And we did not do anything romantic, let me tell you. It was not romantic. We were following the map of their psyche through embodied play. And if you just trust this path, it shows us exactly the way to open to the vulnerability of just letting go, losing yourself in the moment, and becoming your true self in the moment, flowing and connecting. So there's a lot for you to take in. Chew
There's
on
a
that
lot to
one.
take in. Yeah. Um, so in your previous role, Artemisia, did you find that a lot of people come in not actually knowing what their fantasy is, but just kind of wanting to explore more so than had a strict kind of fantasy in mind? This is what I want.
Yes, lots of people don't even realize they have sexual fantasies at all. But kind of like dreams, everybody does. Everybody dreams. You just might not remember them, or you might not realize that they're dreams. Fantasies are the same. So I had to become very good at asking the right questions so that they would become aware of it. And you might start asking questions like, okay, if you were to have the ideal sex this Friday night on date night, what would that look like? And them just describing that is already a fantasy. But even but one of the things I'm actually going to offer your audience in a moment, actually, well, may as well now, is a technique that they can use if they want to start actually understanding their own narrative. Like, it's really, everything I'm sounds like, oh, it's all intellectual, but actually it can be really simple. Like, there's an exercise you can do for free on myfantasyis.com, which is basically just bringing up, doing a Google search of a celebrity that you find swoon worthy, right? So it's called the celeb swoon technique. And seeing several images of the same fantasy. And most people, when you first ask them, they say, okay, you're really attracted to, I don't know, Angelina Jolie. Why? And they'll start to describe Angelina Jolie's physical attributes. But once you bring up these 5 images of Angelina, and it's the same body and it's the same beautiful person in all of these images, you will find yourself attracted to some images more than others, because the body language and the attitude that they're taking on has created a meaning-making story inside of your mind, and you're going to respond more positively to some than others. And as soon as I walk you through the technique of actually starting to go, oh, what am I looking for? What questions should I ask? Oh, what does that mean about me? Oh, there's my narrative. Oh, that's the fantasy I didn't realize was running in the background in the moment that made it okay. I like it better when she's got, you know, piercing eyes looking straight into me because I feel special and I'm the person who's the center of the tension. Or I feel better when she's actually got really soft eyes and I can dive into her because it feels like I'm special now because this is the side of her that the media doesn't normally get to see. This is her being real, not fake. And now I feel safer. There's all sorts of different kinds of subtle stories and meaning making going on. And each person has like a little erotic fingerprint, if you like. Once I found out my client's erotic narrative, I knew it like a genre. I was like, oh, that person, they need this and this and this and this. But I now have the ingredients that their psyche needs. Like, just like if, and I could do anything I want with them. So I don't have to I can do all sorts of surprising things with them. It's like if you're in a cooking show and they gave you 6 different ingredients and you have to cook a dish out of it, but you can cook any dish you like with that 6. You could probably cook, 20 different dishes with those same ingredients. Same with this. Once I understand somebody's narrative, the psychological mechanisms they specifically need to let go, I've now got the key to create wonderful experiences that help them drop so much deeper into their sexual experiences,
Yeah,
which
it's
does
about.
bring me back. Yeah, keep
Sorry.
going.
Go. No, go on. Go on.
I was going to go into why this helps us trust desire. So trusting desire is something, as it's difficult. It might, you might have a sexual fantasy about wanting to be used. You might have a sexual fantasy about taking on a role that you normally wouldn't want to take. You'd find it embarrassing if you did it in real life. It goes against your identity as somebody who's a masculine man to be that vulnerable, to be the one that's getting spanked over a nanny's knee or something. You might be really confused about why on earth you would have these sorts of desires, and it makes you not trust desire. And yet when you realize that it is actually a force that's on your side, desire is whispering these little love letters into your ego's ear saying, hey, ego, you're afraid of being vulnerable because if you're vulnerable, they might laugh at you. They might reject you. They might abuse their power over you. They might, you might harm somebody else. okay, I'm going to make a story for you. I'm going to make a story that includes your fear and transforms your fear. So it ends up being the exact opposite end result than you thought it would. It's going to lead to connection and well-being for everyone, not the opposite. Okay. And when you recognize that, like at first we get really worried because we're like, oh no, it included the terrible thing. That means I'm a terrible person. Oh no, had a fantasy about dominating somebody else and making them feel embarrassed. Oh no, I'm a terrible, terrible person. I must go and, stand in the naughty corner and be ashamed of myself. But when you realize that actually you take a closer look, this sexual fantasy is always a desire to be close to the person, to merge, to actually feel connection, to be in flow together, to feel pleasure together, to let go and be free together. And it's actually on your side. And when you recognize that and you take the skills that you would use to create really safe, consensual, powerful sexual experiences in your playtime, you then develop the skills, the same skills needed to actually satiate the real desire in the rest of your life as well. So, this is actually practice for everything.
Well, why do you think that people often feel kind of ashamed or fearful of their sexual fantasies then? Because do you think that's just all born from society pressure, or do you think that's just natural as well?
Probably both, because we've definitely, or different cultures do it in different ways, but there's probably, you know, it's definitely something that we recognize as private, isn't it? I don't know about you, but even from a very young age, I recognized, even without being told, that this is a part of myself that I shouldn't tell anyone about. This is hush hush. This is inner thoughts, right? But I think that's part of it is because other people will misunderstand and reject us for it. Part of it is because we don't understand ourselves and we don't trust it ourselves. If we start to, like, you might notice I don't feel any shame about saying, hey, I was with thousands of people. I did all sorts of dirty things. Like, I just don't care. Because I know that this part of myself is good. I know in my bones that those experiences were beneficial for me and the people that I was with, that this is a good thing. I have an embodied relationship and I have skills around that make me convinced that this is something that is not only just a good thing, but actually one of the most powerful things about us humans. It's incredible. I trust our desire. Now that I have skills around how to do that, I absolutely trust the message that our desires bring. They always have our best interests at heart. And if the desire is to build a skyscraper, it's still, why do you want to build that skyscraper? Because then I will have achieved the great big thing and everybody will admire me and my giant phallus in the sky. And and I will have, but then, and I'll feel amazing and I'll feel powerful and I'll feel it like, and people will want me and then they'll connect with me and then we can feel connected and then we can have these feelings and share them together. It always comes down to that, right? It
Yeah.
always comes down.
The
Hmm.
the thing with sexual fantasies, I guess, I think a lot of people do see them for whatever reason as like the dark part of them, don't they? That dark side that, oh, I have to hide it because it's dark. It's not right. Whereas I
Mm,
think, understanding them and talking about them more freely will actually bring it into the light more, and you realize that actually everybody has, sexual fantasies. Everybody, and it's okay. It's not a horrible, dark, seedy thing that we have to hide away. It's
mm.
it's just a part of us that we probably just don't understand because we've not taken the time to understand it.
Yeah. And well, there hasn't been any help in that either. Like, where did you go? Only to the pieces that places that pathologized it or didn't help, basically. So that's why it's so important to actually have a set of practices and skills to actually form a new relationship with your desire so that you can trust it, so that you can feel for yourself where it's trying to take you, and you can recognize that that thing that on the surface looks terrible is actually on your side and doesn't want to harm anything if you know how to bring it to life in consensual play. But this, let me give you an example so that it's not just theory. So a sexual fantasy, you might think, oh, somebody might have a fantasy of being used and objectified. And they're like, why would I want to be used and objectified? And in fact, in real life, that's the opposite of one. I want to be seen and appreciated. I want to be connected with. I want you to think that I'm awesome. And I want you to give me the thing that I want. Why would I have this turn on to be used and objectified and turn into just an object? What benefit does that have? How does that move my consciousness from either way? How, like, that's just dirty. What? Why? Right? So let's just imagine then that remember how that there's those three paradoxes that stop you from letting go: the fear of what might happen to you, how you might harm yourself, or the paradox is, if I follow my desire, you've got a different desire, your needs are not going to get met. I'm selfish and I can't do that. I'm a good person. I care about you. I want you to have a good time. I want you to leave thinking that was the best sex ever. I want you to have a wonderful time. But your desire is different to mine. Where you need to go is different to mine. Your narrative running in the background of the moment is different to mine. The thing that's going to get your ego to relax so you let go is different to mine. Should I focus on what you need, or should I focus on what I need? Because isn't the whole point to feel it together? Aren't we trying to be in the zone together? Do we need to have magically exactly the same turn-ons in order for this to work? Or we're not compatible? How does this even work? Can you feel how this is a paradox? It's a no-win situation. It's a good person wanting to follow their own needs so that they can let go, so that they can connect with the other person. Or focus on the other person so that the other person can let go so that they can connect. But how do you do both at the same time? You can't. That's what a paradox is. It's two contradictory rights. It's not a right and a wrong. It's two conflicting rights, creating friction between each other. If you then create a sexual fantasy, desire comes along and whispers a solution in your ear. It says, okay, you can't focus. You're trying to get there together. How about you get used? How about you be objectified? Then they're getting their needs met. But so obviously you don't have to caretake them anymore. All of their desires are going to be met, because otherwise they wouldn't use you. They're getting their needs met, right? But in this fantasy, when they use you and objectify you, they also just magically happen to touch you and do all of the things that you want them to do so that you get your needs met too. And everybody gets to let go in this ideal fantasized situation. Everybody wins. Everybody gets their desires met, and you can both let your guards down, and you can both end up dancing like nobody's watching. You can just surrender, lose life in real. I teach them the art form of how do you create a real life situation that has the same psychological effect, so you can both let go together. How do you know what your narrative is and how it's different from their narrative? How on earth do you create a consensual container around that? I tell you what, this theory of mine, not theory, my set of practices called the divinery method is it's saving marriages. There's all of these people who thought that their marriage had all of these people who had thought for 20 years of being together, that they were the one giving to the other person because I'm giving you what you need. And yet the other one's like, no, I'm giving you what you need. And no one's getting their needs fully met. And no one is going as far as they could into this incredible erotic state of consciousness that they could go. They're only getting so far. They might have lovely orgasms in it, but there's more than that. There's so much more than that, right? That is possible. And so this, once you understand this and you're deliberately creating play dates together, you have a never-ending unfolding date night where you get to discover each other forever. You never run out of new things. You don't have to try on new lingerie just to spice things up. You're now in this situation where you truly see each other and you're truly playing with each other and sharing the truth of the whole of yourself with each other in genuine, joyful play. And it's the best. Everyone should do it right now.
Love it. It's very very similar to stuff I've been saying about non-sexual stuff. Really, is that vulnerability is what creates connection, and that ability to be
Mhm.
vulnerable. Not just in normal everyday situations, but especially in with the sexual stuff. If you can be vulnerable with somebody, truly vulnerable, then that connection is like no other.
The only way to truly be vulnerable is to show the whole of yourself, not just the nice parts. And
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
feels the most incredibly vulnerable and also the most intimate is actually have, like, when someone would sit down on my red velvet couch and they would tell me their sexual fantasy. And often they'd been too shy to tell their partner of however long they've ever been with. They'd been too shy to tell anyone that. And they tell me their sexual fantasy. And I don't poo poo it. I don't criticize it. I lean in. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting fantasy. Tell me more about that. I want to know more. And then I want to play with it. So it's not my fantasy, it's theirs. I'm not pretending it's mine, but I do want to play with it. I want to get in there and be in the flow state of play with them. And how does it feel when somebody really wants to be there doing that with you? And you can feel, when someone's faking it and acting, and when someone's playing. When someone's playing, they're in the joy of it. They're in the delight of it. They want to be there with you, experiencing this.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah. It's giving them the space, isn't it, to explore it as well, and to feel safe to do it.
Mm. And you do end up going down the rabbit hole together by focusing on one person's particular narrative at a time. With the divinery method, you still end up being both being transported into this beautiful erotic state where you let your egos go and you're getting to feel vulnerable together. Where you're finding the safety, the right kind of play to make it okay to be vulnerable. Right, you're living out your fear of what would happen if you're vulnerable and having it turn out to be more than okay. You get to be, desired and ravished and delighted in, and all of the wonderful things connected to.
Yeah, I always find that the best way from my experience anyway, which is not as much experience as you. Don't get me wrong, because
Mm,
obviously you know the theory behind it, you know the practice behind it, etc. But
mm.
it's that it's it needs to be like improv, where you kind of you let that person flow, you kind of dig in and kind of go with it and kind of figure out, maybe to try a little different angle, maybe, or this, and try and figure it out together. That's how I kind of see it in my head.
Yeah, you absolutely and I'm getting out my clipboard and we'll tick this box. No, it's none of this, none of this business. It's absolutely improvising in the moment. But you can improvise an awful lot more effectively if you know what the ingredients of their narrative are. If you know exactly what their ego needs to stand down, you can improvise in that moment and you can have so much fun doing it. It's just fun. But yeah, you don't want to get stuck it's caught in the head and in performance anxiety. We've got enough of that pressure. Thank you very much. We want to be able to let go. That's the whole point.
Yeah, that's it. You don't add any pressure to situations because that's just going to make it so much more difficult, right? Because you're just going to get uptight and you're not going to get into that relaxed state where you can be playful.
Right. But at the moment, most people are, and I mean, it can be for any gender, but an awful lot of men are in this experience where they are expected to mind read. They're expected to just try and figure it out, improv and mind read, and they're not given tools to understand how the erotic psyche works, and they're not given tools to actually ask and find out. And then they do this thing where I don't know, I can't even tell you how many times this happened to me before I developed this theory. It was like we get to the end, and then you can almost set your watch by it. Somebody will be like, "So how was that for you, babe?" How can you even answer that question? You've already immediately been put in a double bind. Somebody has just tried their best to give you the most beautiful pleasure that they can give you. They've really cared for your experience, and they've tried really hard to give you what they think that you want while mind reading. And they inevitably, because they have to, there's no other choice, they have given the person what they would prefer to receive rather than what their lover actually wants. So you've given them what would help your ego to relax. You've given them the kind of touch you want. You've given them the style of what feels good to you, because I mean, what else could you do if you've never talked about it, you've never had any support, you've only ever watched porn as your guidance. Like, this is what else are you going to do? So what the divinery method does is it gives you really clear practices of knowing how to find out what what exactly is the real thing that turns somebody else on and satisfies them. What is the real thing that actually turns yourself on? When you thought it was this, it's actually this. How can you actually ask for exactly what you want in a way that they can actually hear and get and act on and not feel threatened by? Because if you just rely on how was that for you, babe? That's going to say, I mean, you're just going to say that was great, darling, because what else can you say? Right? It's not the kind, that's not how to go about it. So you need some tools, you need some strategies, you need to be able to do this. And then when you've got really clear strategies, you don't get stuck in the head, because now you're not trying to figure it out on the go. Now you're confident. Now you can let go and play.
Yeah, it's. Do you think it's people are just not willing to kind of talk about it unless they kind of in that place, I guess, sometimes, from my experience, which is counterintuitive, really, because then by the time you're feeling sexually aroused, it's it's a little bit too late to talk about it. Even then they just kind of want to get down to business. A lot of people, which kind of takes
Mm-hmm.
away, the ability to discuss these things. So how do you kind of approach it with people or get people to approach it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. People do hesitate. And believe me, as a sex worker, people did not want to talk. They're coming along to pay. And, initially, if you follow this industry standards, they pay by the hour. They're like, I am not paying by the hour to talk about this, lady. There is no way that I'm wasting my time talking about it. Let's just get to it. And they're not conscious and aware of what to ask for anyway most of the time, but other than they will focus on physical activities and physical appearance and maybe what you're wearing. They don't actually understand what to ask for that would really make it hot for them. So there's an art form. There is an art form in actually getting people to become aware of it. But I'll give you just a little clue of a little something that you can take away and just use right now, which is the panning for gold technique. So instead of going, how was that for you, babe? Which is not going to work. Don't do it. Say, Instead, go back and think about what was actually really like, just like when you watched a favorite movie and you're talking with your friends afterwards and you're thinking about highlight moments. Go into your own highlight moments first. Don't talk about theirs to start with. Go into your own and say, that moment when you were leaning against the door frame and the cheeky look that you gave me while I was waiting for you on the bed just sent shivers through my spine. And then tell them how you interpreted that body language, because it's going to be different to how they experienced it in the moment. Right? So you're already telling them your meaning making story. So in that moment, I imagined that you were going to be, you were going to prowl over and I felt like I was prey. Actually, I thought you were like a cat. You were going to pounce on me, and I was going to be quite primal. And I was going to get my neck bitten, right? And in reality, what they did is they walked across to you really seductively, but then touched you really featherly soft, and it wasn't like a cat at all. But their narrative was different. My narrative was the cat, and I'm now telling them what I imagined would happen when they looked at me like that. And now they know what I want. And in that moment, I can turn around and then say, and that was, the way you made me feel when you did that. I got to feel this, when you, grabbed my hair and flipped me over. I got to feel so small and so desired, and it just made me feel like so. I just let go because I knew you wanted to be with me. Like, something about it. What did I get to feel? Actually say it. What did I get to feel? Because then they know what you're trying to feel. Because they might think that you're trying to feel romantic intimacy when actually you're trying to feel primal. Like, you have to tell them. You have to tell them moments that were working, they were heading in the right direction. They don't have to be perfect, but you communicate that. And you're doing that straight afterwards. And who doesn't want to hear that? For us, saying it first, we might feel really awkward. We might feel really vulnerable saying it. But think about yourself on the receiving end. If someone just says to you that, the way that the way you looked at me when you were just about to give me oral sex, oh my God, I just melted. Like, because you just the way you looked at me like I was a goddess. I felt so beautiful in that moment. Right? Who doesn't want to hear that? Don't you feel amazing that you got to give somebody that feeling? It feels incredible. You're already feeling intimate, even though you feel shy saying it because it's not natural to start with. As soon as you get into the habit of actually doing this, you're sharing what your narrative is and you're inviting them in. So that's just a little thing that you can start doing straight away. You can start communicating an awful lot about what it is that's setting off your hot buttons, what it is that you were imagining would happen in that moment, what you're really desiring. They came over softly and touched you with feather-light fingers, but actually you wanted the cat to pounce on you. And you didn't have to tell them that they did anything wrong. You're just inviting them in by your excitement, saying, when you did that, I was imagining this. That was so hot.
Yeah, I think that's the important bit as well, right? Not trying not to criticize people, because people,
Mm.
if you do it in a negative way, then people will take that negatively, and that'll have a negative impact going forward rather than a positive one, right? So it's about, like you say, highlighting the bits you enjoyed, that how you felt, and your experience, rather than saying, oh, I wish you did this, I wish you did that, because that's
Mm.
just that's the road to nowhere, right?
It is the road to nowhere. And then you can flip it around because you've just modeled how to do it. You can flip it around and go, were there any moments that were particularly hot for you? And they will, because they're avoidant, will say it was all hot, babe. And then you go, yeah, fantastic, awesome, I'm great. Were there any moments, though, that were particularly exciting for you? Like anything that stands out as heading in the right direction for something that you're even hungry for more of? And then get them to actually focus on a specific moment. Right? Actually, that moment actually when you, I don't know, I've suddenly got a mental blank. I've normally got all of them flowing through. Like that moment when you looked stern for a moment. Actually, that was extremely exciting for me. I felt anxious, but that was kind of exciting because I didn't know what was going to happen next. It brought in this mystery and unknown. You were unreadable in that moment, and that was super exciting to me. When you thought the most exciting part was when you were looking at them tenderly. So, and they might, and at that point you go, oh wow, that's what you were thinking when I was looking at you like that. That's amazing. In that moment, what could make that even better? If you were even greedier and you could have even more of what you want, what could happen in that moment? Like, what
Yeah,
could happen there?
I think it's communication throughout relationships, not just the sexual thing that we are renowned terrible for, that we need to get better at. All of us, I think,
Yeah.
but especially as you explain and say this stuff, like we just
Mm.
don't talk about sexual fantasies. We don't talk about sex really that much
Mm.
when you think about it, and yet we're expected to kind of keep each other sexually satisfied and happy, and but we probably know very little about each other sexually.
That's right. Yeah, I know. And as a sex worker, I got all of those people coming to see me, so I heard all about it. And there's so many people who desperately wanted to be able to satisfy each other, and they really—that's what struck me was actually the genuineness of how everybody really wanted their lovers to be happy, but they just didn't know how. They didn't, and when they had tried to ask, they asked in the wrong ways, and their partner was too shy to answer, and they got no useful information, and they didn't know how to go forward from there. Even the really self-aware ones who had excellent relationship communication still didn't know how to do this. And I was really truly touched by how genuine people were, um, uh, in wanting to please their lovers, in wanting to connect with their lovers. Right? That's something that I'll take away with me, knowing that I get to see that secret part of people. Everyone thinks that sex work is all sleazy, but actually, I got to see the most vulnerable and precious part of people over and over again. So, yeah,
Yeah, and it's strange, isn't it, that the people with good communication even can't kind of break through them barriers and stuff. And I suppose it's knowing how, I guess. Um,
it
and that's what
is.
you do. That's what you do, is help people kind of understand how to do it, because, like you say, you know we're not taught anything, are we, as we go through life, important. So even when we go through school, we're not taught anything about relationships. You're not taught anything about kind of money or managing finances, none of the important stuff. And sexual fantasies, that's massively taboo, so that's shoved down to the side. Oh no, we never talk about that. So
Mm.
how are people supposed to know these things, really?
That's right, and I want to make it clear that what I've told you is out of context now. So that little tiny piece is only one piece of the puzzle that you need. You need a really clear container, and you need to be able to honestly talk about this thing properly, not just hint halfway through sex. Like what I've told you now is not a direct conversation. It's a strategy to use, but that has to be in context with truly understanding what your erotic narrative is and finding out the other person's and having a really clear container around what it is you're doing. And when you do that, the stronger and clearer the container, the stronger and clearer your intention of being together is, the deeper you can let go, the further you can travel together. You can just explore things you didn't even know were possible. Feeling states you didn't realize were there. And I would experience that again and again with complete strangers in sex work, is when I would actually be able to create a really safe container, a really clear communication about what we're doing and intention together, understand their narrative, and bring it to life in play, consensual play. They would often say things to me, oh my God, I had no idea I could feel this way. This feels like the real me, the me that I was I thought I was all along. I sensed I was. The other one out there is fake. This is who I really am. This is the wholeness of myself. Feels like I'm on drugs. It feels like I've just taken ecstasy. I've just been on psychedelics. I've got no barriers. I'm completely open. And yet I haven't taken any drugs. I feel the most grounded and most real and most present I've ever been. What just happened? What was that? I didn't even know that was possible. I thought sex was just about having an orgasm. But actually, it can feel like coming home to yourself. It can feel like having a oneness experience full of awe and wonder, with that falling in love with life itself again. It can be a spiritual experience. And that is a good segue to my upcoming book, which is called The Spirituality of Smut, The Surprising Wisdom of Sexual Fantasies.
Tell me about the book.
Well, I'm going to tell the stories about how I figured this theory out and flesh the theory out for you. But all of the stories from the sex industry about how I worked out how this works. What are the 3 paradoxes of desire? How do they play out in different fantasies? Break down different fantasies for you so that you can start to see how it works and bring it to life for yourself. And that will be coming out hopefully in April 2025.
Amazing. Uh, where can people get hold of you if they want to kind of learn a little bit more about you?
Okay, excellent question. My name is my website, so artemisiadivine.com is where you can inquire about some one-on-one private coaching if you're interested in exploring this further. And I definitely recommend getting on my newsletter, because anything to do with sex on social media gets algorithm muted. So even if you follow me on Insta, you're never going to see my posts. So get on my mailing list, because I'm super generous on there. I share lots of skills. But I also recommend just starting with that celeb swoon technique, which is at myfantasyis.com, and actually just doing something. And in the doing, feel how it works, and then get more curious about what to do. And that will get you on my mailing list anyway, doing that.
No problem. I'll make sure I pop both them links in the show notes so people can find you easier and get in touch with you.
Yeah. Well, I hope that
It's
wasn't
been
too overwhelming for you, Aaron.
no, it's been a really interesting conversation. I could keep going for ages, to be honest. I mean, there's so many different aspects to it and different things that avenues we could go down, or things we could talk about, and it's just not spoken about, is it? To be honest, I mean,
No.
I don't know anybody else who speaks about sexual fantasy and teaches people how to kind of explore it and you know and and manage it in a way that people feel safe and comfortable to communicate it and be vulnerable. So
I
it's a
forgot to
really
say
interesting.
something, actually. Thank you.
Go on.
I know you're just winding up, but I'm just going to finish with this, because I forgot to say something really important that might be useful to you, which is I started offering online live monthly classes, which you can get the recording of, or you can turn up live and ask questions, where I'm actually teaching little aspects of the divinery method once a month. And you can buy the recording of the past ones to catch up as well. So if you're shy and you don't want one-on-one, you're not ready for the one-on-one coaching commitment, but you're still curious and you want to learn some real skills, there's an opportunity for you to do that as well.
No problem. That might be useful for people as well to kind of listen to other people's questions as well, to see that sometimes it's nice to know that it's not just you, isn't it?
That's right. I mean, I've taught all sorts of people. I've taught several Christian ministers now, because they teach, they're dealing with their clergies, they're dealing with their parishioners' queries. Right, and they don't know where else do you go. Like, they don't understand. They think they're being sinners, and suddenly, and they don't have any way of understanding it. They're also supposed to give marriage counseling. And when you start hearing that actually these people are normal people just like me, also having these really out there fantasies, and they're normal and they make sense, and they're actually not, that doesn't mean we're broken at all. We're not perverted. It's not wrong. It's actually plays a really important role in our in our psychological health and our relationship health, that's a powerful thing in and of itself, just to witness that. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna bring this to a close shortly, but I just wanted to see if you had any kind of final thoughts or final messages for people.
My final message is you can actually trust your desire. You absolutely can learn practices so that you can harness your desire in every area of your life. And you can trust it that it will take you home to true satiation. It will take you home to wholeness. You just have to understand it and know how to turn it into your ally. In fact, it is the only thing that knows how to take you home to true satiation because it created the desire in the first place. So, this is a part of you that is not broken. This part of you matters.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aaron.